Howdy folks, BC here. You're watching Deuce and Guns, and today I'm going to take the 50 pounds of lead wheel weights I received in the mail, and I'm going to go ahead and melt them down so I can use that lead later on to make bullets. Today I'm going to bring you guys along and show you my technique to do that. Okay, now lead wheel weights come in various sizes, shapes, made of different materials, and different lead compositions. What you want is lead clip-on wheel weights to go on the outside of the wheel. Thus the little clip right here. The reason why you want that is because these stick-on lead wheel weights that go inside your rim, those are actually a much softer lead. So you really don't want to use those unless you're actually going to be shooting black powder. Now they also make clip-on wheel weights made out of zinc and steel. The steel are very easy to differentiate, and here's one of the wheel weights that you actually want to avoid at all costs. It looks like a normal wheel weight. It smells like a normal wheel weight. Don't smell your wheel weights. But it is in fact not made of lead, but ZN, which stands for zinc. Now zinc is a horrible alloy to cast bullets from. It actually contaminates your other lead and will actually cause normal lead to become pretty much unusable in the molding process for bullets. Now one of the reasons why I melt my lead between 600 and 700 degrees is because zinc doesn't start melting until 787 degrees. So as long as you keep it below there, then the zinc is going to float to the surface on your molten lead. Now, how can you tell that this is actually lead versus zinc? Well, let me show you. You can take a pair of pliers and you can mangle up a lead wheel weight. Can you do that with zinc? Even sounds different. You can hear how hard it is. So do your best to actually avoid the zinc wheel weights, because if you do cast at a higher temperature and you toss one of these zinc ones in there, then you could possibly have a really bad experience trying to cast bullets because it will not fill out the mold very well. Now let's go over the items that I use to melt my lead. Now, there are much more expensive, better options out there, but I went cheap like always. First of all, a cheap hot plate, a steel or cast iron pot, a ladle of some sort, and a strainer to get all the steel clips out, a Lee lead ingot mold, a heat-resistant steel can just like this metal coffee can to put all the hot clips and debris into. And before you start working with lead, make sure you read up on all the precautions you need to make before you start, because you do not want to be ingesting lead, inhaling lead, anything of that nature. It's a neurotoxin and it's very bad news. So of course you're not going to be eating, drinking, picking your nose, rubbing your eyes, scratching your ears, anything when you're working with lead and you got lead on your hands. And that's why I'm taking this whole thing outside, because it is way too dangerous to be melting this lead inside your house, garage, basement, or bunker without some sort of fume hood to remove all the hazardous, noxious fumes and get it out of the building. I know what you're asking yourself. You're asking, BC, why don't you use the Lee melting pot that you use to cast bullets to melt the lead initially? Well, it's a good question. Now, if I have just one or two of these lead wheel weights hanging around, yeah, next time I'm casting bullets, I'll just toss it right in there, let it melt, and all the debris will float to the surface and I'll skim it off. But I'm processing 50 pounds of lead wheel weights, and that's going to introduce a ton of debris, a ton of road grime and grease and paint, because actually a lot of these are painted, and that's going to introduce a lot of just junk I'm going to have to clean up afterwards into my Lee melting pot. And I'll have to keep this kind of clean so then I don't have to break it down as often, because it's kind of a hassle to break it down and clean. Okay, we've got a nice layer of lead down there that's molten. And go ahead, I forgot to mention my fork. Just have an old fork around that I use for all my lead needs. Okay, we're about a third full here, and I've just been adding more and more wheel weights to here. And here's all the clips that are left over. They're made of steel, so they have a much higher melting temperature. That's all nice and fluid. So you take your strainer. Now you want to set your strainer down there and let it heat up a little bit, because lead will stick to cold metal. You don't want the big clump of lead just sticking to the bottom there. So let it heat up a little bit and then dump it into your can. And now look at all that dirt right there. That is paint or road grime. And what I simply do is let the fork heat up a little bit in the molten lead. Work all over to the side, and the lead will drip through the tines on the fork, leaving the dirt. Alrighty, when you're ready to pour your ingots, go ahead and get rid of your thermometer there, because you're not going to need that. I already had my, it's getting hot now, so time to put on the gloves, or at least one of them. There we go. already had the ladle sitting there heating up because all your tools hitting the lead will need to be warmed up or the lead will stick to it. And it is cold outside, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to dip my actual ingot mold in there too to heat that up. All right, I think we're heated up now. So you just want to take the ladle and you pour it into the ingots. See, I like Lee's ingot mold better because you have 2 1-pound molds and 2 half-pound molds in the center there. So you have your choice of when you're adding, say if you're trying to alloy something or make a harder or softer alloy, then you have sizes to choose from. Now I'm going to set this aside and just let it cool. There we go. You have 2 1-pound molds and 2 half-pound ingots. And that's how I turn useless used wheel weights into usable lead that I can put through my Lee melter and make bullets out of. Now one final step I do is I've got basically this little steel stamping set that I got from Harbor Freight. It was super cheap because I get lead from different sources. Sometimes it's from the range that does backstop. Sometimes it's from roofers or people who repair radiators. So I'm going to take a W here and I'm going to go ahead and mark. And with those 2 W's on there, that'll tell me later on after I've forgotten that this lead is actually made up of wheel weights, and I know about what composition that is and what hardness that is. And after everything is cooled off, then starts your cleanup process, because you got to clean up everything, of course, clean yourself up really well, clean up all your clothes, and all the debris that you took out of the molten lead, the steel clips and the dirt and the melted paint and all that stuff needs to go into that tin can, and you need to take that to the dump. And basically that's going to be taken care of along with any other hazardous materials such as batteries. Well guys, that's all I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like and go ahead and subscribe because I have a lot more on the way. If you have any comments, questions, or show ideas, leave them in the comment box below the video. You guys have a great day. See ya.